before, it's a real treat to be here at the El Convento at the Sangre de Cristo Church. We're here in the San Luis Valley. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's in the southwestern part of Colorado in the San Luis Valley. This is a farming community, but the roots to this community go back centuries. Goes back to the Spanish, goes back to the Native Americans, and the people here are hardworking, good, solid people who love their roots and who bring that tradition forward with them to the present day. We're very pleased to have met and have with us today Miss Teresa Vigil and her daughter Berlinda. Teresa will be talking about natural healing, what she has learned, things that she got from her family as she was growing up, from other Native Americans who were in the area. And it's a real treat to be able to be with her today. She's got a great presentation set up for us. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Teresa. I'll let her talk a little bit about herself, how she got to here, and we'll take it from there. Teresa?
Good day and many blessings to all of you on this special day that we celebrate the earth. My name is Teresa Vigil, and I live in the San Luis Valley and in the oldest town in Colorado. I became very interested in working with plants of the area due to the kind of lessons I learned from my grandparents, whom I spent much time here every summer as a child. I eventually moved here in 1974 with my children, 6 children and my husband, after living in San Francisco, California, about 34 years. And we had an awakening with illness happened at the school at the time. And I remembered something my grandmother had right outside the door growing. And I went and picked it and prepared it like she did to give my children the medicine to get over the colds. And it worked. And after that, I started asking the older people what certain plants were. They were all around us and they're wonderful. I've learned since then that a lot of them are right in our midst, and the people here believe in it. At first, you know, being a licensed vocational nurse in California, I sort of made a little fun of it, but I found out it was terrific and it worked, and it was right outside your door. And the wonderful thing I started to do after that, I was lucky to make friends with one of my neighbors who had Native in her, and she also knew her mother was a midwife. And so I started to learn about the plants then. And since then, I actually attended Regis University Without Walls in my 60s. So next week I'll be 89. And I started to, through the encouragement of one of the teachers here, I started to study herbology and some other things. And I completed that semester with University with Regis. And after that, in working with mental health, I worked as a outreach. I really became interested in the herbs because I saw our patients so zonked at times, and I didn't like how it was, so I started to get more interested. Eventually, of all things, I was sent to San Francisco to a natural herbal kind of a class. And I gained from that also to learn that there were many ways of healing. not so much like going to the pharmacy and seeing wall-to-wall medications, but there were a lot of different things I learned about light, sound, oils, herbs in particular. So my interest grew from that, and eventually I started to share with others, and that's what I do now. I often go to the mountains, a certain part of the mountain where we go from level to level, knowing the plant when it's alive and what the uses are. One of the plants that we are very much in use of is called osha. And I think Jim just showed you the plant, that it's the root that is the most valuable. And there's two kinds of that we have. One is called osha de la sierra. This one is osha del campo, meaning right in our midst. If we were to step out the door, I could immediately show you plant. This is like dynamite for us. We believe in it. It is boiled, it is chewed, it is powdered, and I tincture it. So I actually have here one of the tinctures and the uses, and I share it a lot with people here. I don't sell it. In fact, I just took my doctor some. She wanted to know about it. And, but I also took her the root, one of the roots that Osha del Campo is very a big root. It's a huge root. You almost have to take an axe to it. When it's growing, it has this lovely celery-like look. And it actually tastes like celery. I have dried it and pulverized it and added to what I call my get well soup. That's another story. But anyway, I have another, that colita. We call it the colita. It's right there, Berlinda, on top. No, right there. Oh, okay. This is stronger than this, even though this is a very big root. There are probably 40 known herbs of this osha in the world. Actually, the Chinese used it a lot. Yes, they did. And I remember going to San Francisco, somebody was getting the little ear pinched for an ailment they had. And I remember seeing the pots there, and I immediately knew it was osha, and I asked about that. But the Chinese used this also, and how it came to be here, I think when our early people came, the Spaniards, and it was brought from the Mediterranean, all those people were using it. So this is like #1 medicine for the people. Almost anybody you ask that about medicine, they know osha. Osha de la sierra, osha del campo. But this little guy is more expensive and it's stronger, believe it or not. And so that's one of the plants, and then chamiso. And another one that we use, and it's just abundant here, no chamiso in the pot. And this is sage, okay? We call this variety, we have different sages. You have culinary sage, like from the garden, but this is sage from the mountains here, all over. But there are different kinds of sages. We use this one, which is rabbit bush, another name. The troubled plants have a lot of names. That's why you have to go and identify them. You get a little confused. You have to see them when they're blooming. You have to see them when they're dead, because you need to know what you're picking. This one we call chamizo hediondo. Hediondo means stinky, literally, because it's very fragrant. Right now, my eyes are running. But if you go to the mountains on a rainy day and you have a sinus problem, believe me, you will have your nose running. And so we use this more, not internal. We use this more for rheumatism, soaking in it, other ailments. This one we consume. Also, we can drink this tea. It's very fragrant and very strong. So to caution you, you must always know what you're doing, learn about the plant. Don't just take it on. Another caution that now there are so many medications, and I think the doctors are doing a good job because they make you put down your supplement, and I think that's a real plus. But we still use them. We are very connected to this. Out of the, this is something the natives taught us. And they make bundles like this. And it's like we use in the church incense. This is their incense. And now that I had, when the virus broke out, a lot of people are asking me, they wanted to fumigate certain rooms, and it's dried and burned, and that's supposed to purify the air. Also, for colds, sore muscles, different things like that, we have used it a lot. So these are very basic things that I think everybody identifies with. Yes, we could do this. And capulin, or chokecherry. This happens to be the just starting to bud. And actually, I remember my grandmother gathering in the fall, the stems, the thicker stems, and drying them, and then boiling them when we had a cold. We should add sugar, burnt sugar, and make sort of a non-narcotic cough syrup. But we also made chokecherry jam. I have people coming at the Mercy shop all the time looking for it. But this year, nature was a little angry with us, and we did not get chokecherries or rose hips, which is sad, because these are the number one thing people come from the cities to buy: chokecherry jelly and what we call champia jam or rose hip jam. This is the rose hip with the little, I happened to find, the reason I found this, I grew it in my yard. I brought a plant, and that's why I had a few little jars of champia jam or rose hip jam, but I didn't share it.
What's the benefit of that?
And but the rose hip,
The benefit of chokecherry?
oh, the benefits of chokecherry. Back to the chokecherry. Okay, the chokecherry is also medicine. A lot of plants are not only food. Think of the pine. The pinon wood is the best to burn. It warms the house, or to cook with. It also makes beams to shelter us. But the pine leaves also give us medicine. The pine cones on the pinon tree give us food. How wonderful a tree is. Can you imagine? Even the cottonwood, you'd be surprised when I take people on walks here, right here in the churchyard. I talk much about the alamo, the cottonwood, because there's lovely stories about that. And I think not only does nature give us out of the plants food, shelter, medicine, but some pleasure. We can make, going back to the rose hip, I go carefully and pick the blossoms. They're all pink and pretty because they're going to blow away. And I make things out of it. I do sachets. I do different things. I also have made for myself something for my skin. And like, for instance, like a sachet, you could put the rose petals in there and maybe some mint because we have, there's a little bag of mint. We have two wonderful mints we use in the area. One's called yerba buena, meaning good weed, but it's not that weed we are having some issues about. And, but this yerba buena, I managed to get this in the, over there at Father's yard. I hope he's not watching. But anyway, I found it kind of sprouting up, and it's wonderfully fragrant and gentle. And this is used for cold, for stomach, for cramps, for you name it. And also I make jam with it. At Christmas, I picked this particular mint, and I make a real pretty green jelly. And then I do the rose hips in red, and it sells real nice at the store. They have the red and green, but it's all wild thing. And we have another mint that we pick, and it grows mostly near the river. And it's called poleo. It's a little stronger, okay? And poleo, it's a different kind of mint. There are two popular mints in the valley that everybody associates with, and those are it. We also have, because I have a little greenhouse that my husband and I, and somebody here that helped us at the greenhouse out of the recycled adobe that the garage came down. And so, but I grow in it, and I grow all kind of culinary herbs like rosemary, mint, I have parsley, I have different things that I'd like to cook with. I'm very fond of basil, which doesn't grow here, but I have pots of it and I use it almost daily. This, one of my neighbors is now deceased. I had never seen this one, but she gave it to me. It's called Poleo de Castile, from Castile, Spain, maybe somewhere down the line, but it grows, it really travels all over. So I have to, filter it out. But it's another mint and has a little fuzzy, but it's very fragrant, and I truly love it. I like to crush it up and spread on the floor when I vacuum. And sometimes you can make your own concoctions for cleansing. I also use rosemary. It's not relevant to the area, but rosemary is a wonderful herb for cooking, for cleansing. And I will often put it in water and spray, to clean, especially now. But I also drink a cup every day, as I read in one old English story, that it gets the mind clear and good. And especially as I'm aging, I have my cup of tea every afternoon. So we have the sunflowers, of course. They're here in the valley, they grow a lot of different sunflowers, and there are so many species that they can't name them. But my children, my 7 children, were definitely the ones that ate the most poly seeds, they called them. Sunflower seeds. I used to find them all over. Oh, Lordy. But anyway, I love the sunflower just because it's so vibrant and beautiful, and it just sort of wakes up my spirit when I see it. But one of the things too, you see wild flax, and I think I have that one you picked up first. Yes, that's it. This is wild flax, and we call it linseed in Spanish. And it was also gathered, and now you see it on the highways, that little purple flower that looks so dainty, and it wilts in the afternoon. Well, linseed is flax, and so I gather it, and it when you dry it, you could make a little eye pillow. And what you do, I put them in the freezer, and then yeah, or you can warm them lightly, but your eyes are precious, so you have to be careful. So that's one way to use it. It's also used for the innards, it's very cleansing. So I have fun with all the plants because it also wakes up a little artist in me. And I've had fun making over the years many things people like. I made herbal bath. One time I used 15 different wild herbs, and then I added essential oil. Pure essential oil is a must. Don't use cosmetic for your body. And so one of the things I learned to do too was to tincture osha. And tincturing, it has a longer life. You use less. Like all I need to do is I'm catching a cold, boil a cup of water, put a few drops, and drink it. I also gargle with it. I also, like if you got a sore, somebody told me recently their dog got bit and that they used the Osha drops I had given them and that the dog got better. We also have in the mess here and all over the churchyard. In fact, I didn't plant any of these in my yard. I had probably 15 different plants come up in my yard, beautiful. And I had some beautiful pictures of that. But this is, we call it the malva or rosa de Castilla. It's also called vara de San Jose, the staff of St. Joseph. So again, names can confuse you. There's also the wild malva, and it's widely used by the Hispanics. And it grows low, and it was actually a food during famine. And then it has little tiny purple flowers. The hollyhocks, otherwise we call it mountain hollyhock too, beautiful blossoms. And there's an example of one of them. I decided to do a little artwork to teach the children I found one of them out there, and so I glued it on there. But we call it hollyhocks, or we call it malvas, malvas. So, and then one of the things I also like to do is use the juniper berries. And we know we can use those in cooking. You go to a culinary store, and Berlinda has a lot of it on her land, so I gather it there. And this year it wasn't as kind to us, but you could see a little bit of the bush there. It's a very picky bush. And when you pick, you have to really be careful. And but if I have sore throat, sometimes I'll boil just a few and drink it. But there are many uses to juniper. Like I said, all the pines have something to give us, believe it or not, in some way. What do you do at the end of summer when all the flowers are dying? Not Teresa, she gathers them and makes potpourri. Sometimes I put an old, or I'm eating an orange, I'll peel the orange. I'll put that in, oh, a little bit of cinnamon, little bit of spice, and you have something pretty for the house. And I remember being in Mexico one time, and they had just built a new condo and going in the bathroom, and that, I thought that was the most beautiful sight. They had a big wooden thing with potpourri and all kinds of things. And so that gave me an idea that I do the same thing. I actually would make potpourri for our store and put it in pretty baggies like this. And, people bought it. But so they would save me the flowers from the church, and they all work. In here, I have the rose hips. The rose hips that makes the lovely jam. It's the price. But these are the berries. But also, what I do after I take the tips off, I grind them up, put them in a jar, and I have like a pharmacy in my house. I have rosehip ground up, hierba buena or mint, or different kinds of things, and I make, teas out of them. And one night I was getting ready for a presentation, and I said, oh, I need a cup of tea, and I reached and I didn't have any tea. So I went up to what I call my laboratory, and I got a little of this and that, and I made me a cup of tea, and I tell my husband, this is simply lovely. And so I called it Simply Lovely Tea. And I recently wrote a story for Berlinda's granddaughter, Gianna. And I do bilingual stories for children. I'm working on that. And I had a little teapot that was sort of precious to me. And so I need to give it to one of the grandkids now. And of course, Simply Lovely Tea is the recipe that goes in. And the story it kind of helps behavior. And that's what my stories usually are about. Like I wrote a story about the 10 mouse, and the 10 mouse got me going on this. Okay, this is Rey Raton. And in the story, it's full of catnip. You know what catnip is? Nevada. It doesn't grow here, but I grow it in the greenhouse. And so what I did, I also tinctured it. So I made these by hand. And it's a story about a little mouse. The parents loved him so much, but they called him El Rey, the king. And so one day he's mischievous, and I actually do a little play with the children. I have the big jars of harina y canela, the flour and the cinnamon. And the little mouse goes up, and he gets in trouble, and he falls into the harina, the flour. He said, I don't like this. I want to get out. And when he tries to get out, he knocks over the cinnamon. And then his mother comes in and says, oh my goodness, he's tan. So I actually make a little tan mouse and fill them with catnip, and we sell those at the store, the toy. But this is what nature does to you. It gets you excited just being out, and I miss it with this pandemic because I want to go so bad. I couldn't wait for summer to come. And I do take people up, and just to get out. And there's something about nature to get that going in your body. But out of the area, we have so many plants that we just don't appreciate. And of course, this is the Yucca plant. It's very picky. It reminded of poor Jesus with the thorns. But the root, our natives, we learned a lot of things from the natives when the Spaniards came here. they already had the knowledge of China, Egypt, all those places, Italy and Scandinavia. They all brought something to the New World. That's why we have the plants around us. I made a little bag over there that the bag that I visualized the Spaniard. I saw a saint with this one time. It's where they carried the seed, San Isidro. We have a patron saint called San Isidro or Isidore, and he often depicted with the seed, and he's planting, and there's another story about, religious story about that. But the natives used the root not only as sort of a cleansing, but they also, the root was used, they had good hair because they used the root to wash their hair with. So that's another plant that's in the area.
You can do dandelion.
Okay.
Dandelion.
Okay. And then a very common thing is the dandelion. And dandelions were used a lot for, for different ailments, but it was also very nutritious. They ate the leaf. But this is one of the best liver cleansers, the root. And I met a woman from Walsenburg one time who taught me that they would dig them up in the early spring and the root and scrub them, and they would cook them like a potato because it was very spring cleaning, you might say, of your body. And the people here gather the leaves and make a good salad. And they tell me, oh, they put chili piquin over them in the salad, Also, the blossom makes wine, dandelion wine. It's edible, not very tasty though, to me anyway. So we could go, we have so many plants here. We look to the culinary plants. This does not grow here. Lavender does not grow here, okay? We have to introduce those to our garden, to different things, but I remember being in Italy and going on the train and seeing bushes of rosemary. I said, oh, and I recognized right away, I said, I can't believe, there's so much of it, and I started with a little plant, it's this big, and now I have, I cut it and I dry it and we have it at the Mercy shop. I think I have it back here. And I encourage people to drink a cup of tea a day, keep the mind going. But it's also good, like you got 18 bones and the best facial. Boy, when I boil, and I'm kind of sciencey, it's so good for your skin. What I do, I boil the water and I take out a cup to drink, and then I get a towel, and I'm telling you, just clears up your skin wonderful. Or if you've had a wound, I had a patient here when I worked at the county nurse, and I came in and the lady was washing her wound with chamomile. And I said, oh, don't tell the doctor, but she was healing. So often, so I brought her some rosemary to continue the cleanse. She got better. But this is very antiseptic. They do a lot of things with rosemary, not only chicken and pork or whatever. I use this profusely and share it. I share it. So
Teresa, we once had some time for questions.
Okay.
So did you want to tell your story? There was a story you wanted to share before we go to questions?
The one at the end?
Okay, yeah, the poem.
Yes.
Yes, and because it's Earth Day, we want to remember how good the earth is to us. and why we need to pay attention to what's going on. When children come and voice out, I saw a little girl recently voice out that we're ruining the earth. It's sad. And we need to pay attention to that. I was in Pennsylvania, I got invited to an environmental conference. And when I heard the people talking, there were people from all over the world talking about how our earth is getting ruined. And one of the things, I got so taken with that, and that night I went to my room, and like I tell you, my Spanish isn't that good, but I wrote a poem because it touched me so much, and I would like to share this poem with you. It's called Tierra Amable. La voz de la tierra llora a toda la gente de todo el mundo. Mírame, cuídame, respétame, guárdame, ámame. Yo te doy la vida. Con su llanto le abro mi corazón, escuchando el número de la vida. Conozco a la voz de la tierra que me da en abundancia vida y me calma el alma. And I shall say it in English. The voice of the earth cries out to all the people of the world, look at me, watch over me, respect me, love me, because I give you life. With your cry, I open my heart, listening to the sounds of the earth that gives me abundant life and calls my soul with gratitude. And I want to thank Jim and his wife and Mary who came to share my passion. And I give greetings to Ascension Church, Lutheran Church, to all the people there, and I hope, willing, I may get to meet you someday.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Please stay here.
Oh.
We'd like to, at this time, open up.
Wait, I'm gonna change the battery.
Okay.
I'm gonna change it, you say I'm gonna change the battery?
Okay, stand by for just a moment. We're going to change the battery in the camera. Is the audio still on?
Not yet.
Okay.
She's my helper.
Okay, now we're on. Just like that.
Dandelion. Oh, don't forget, I want you to take these so you can copy
Okay,
these.
we're on.
I will mention this. Okay.
Okay.
I'll mention this.
And because people ask me so much on this one, today that also,
Okay.
this is about oils, herbal, because there are many ways of healing.
Teresa has made copies for us of a number of the documents and the sheets and information sheets on the topic she's been talking about, as well as reference books and authors if you want to know more about the subject. So we will take these back with us and make copies and make them available, perhaps even scan them and put them out on the website. But Teresa, thank you for doing this for us. This will be great. So at this time, if the audience on Zoom has any questions, if you could just unmute yourself and ask your question, and Mary will pass it forward to us.
Jim, this is Val, and can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what you use to make a tincture.
The question is, what do you use to make tincture? How do you make it?
Well, there are many methods. You could use vodka, gin, or I like Everclear. And you know, during the first part of the pandemic, I went to buy it. The hospitals were buying it all because they were doing that. So that some of the things, and I have another sheet that I didn't bring, but I could send it to you on methods of doing it. Yeah. So that's some of the things I do.
One of the questions I had while we're waiting here is, are there any diseases that you have found solutions for or remedies for that work better than modern medicine? Are there any sicknesses that you have better solutions than modern medicine?
Definitely, because you could go wall to wall with medications, and there's always a problem that I read something they gave me the other day, and I said, I'm not taking this because you should see the indications. They had so many things, and I said that isn't worth it. It isn't worth it. So yeah, I'm very careful about. I don't take anything unless I read. It's the same with herbal medicine, and there was something I did want to share. I think it's over there, Berlinda, about some medications don't mix with herbs. So again, a caution about it. And I don't think I have it with me, but there is a caution about that. So please be careful about what you're taking and check with your doctor. No. And so, because like say echinacea, it doesn't blend with certain medications. So you got to always watch that. And I'll try to get what I found in a magazine, but it's very helpful and it gave you indications of that. Okay, for instance, aspirin. Willows are aspirin. Aspens have that, chemical. So if you drank willow tea, you would not be taken if you're allergic to aspirin. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
That was Val.
Okay, that was Val. Another question that I'm thinking of is, what is life like here for those people who aren't familiar with this part of Colorado in the San Luis Valley? What's it like being here in San Luis?
Well, I spent every summer here. My dad was born just near a little town near Alamosa. I was born in Alamosa, and the house I was born at home, and the house is still there. The house, and my mother was born here. My great grandparents were from here. Well, actually, my great grandfather came from Chihuahua, Mexico, and he married my grandmother, who was born in San Ildefonso Reservation in near Santa Fe. So we have Native, we have European for Sean's mother's side. And my great-great-grandfather was the first Hispanic senator in Costilla County, Antonio Vaca. So we're connected, even though I have traveled to several places to the goodness of something that happened for me. I went to Australia and I lived in Japan 2 years. My oldest daughter, her oldest sister, was born in Yokosuka, Japan. And my husband was in the Navy, so I spent 2 years there, and she almost got born in Japan. I was 7 months pregnant when I came home. But I lived in the village for 2 years where nobody, And I had to learn Japanese a little.
Teresa, one thing that the people may not have been able to see, but can you describe what you have behind you here, this
Well,
chart?
You're gonna have it in that hand sheet I gave you.
Okay.
Okay, because what I'm talking about here, the history, where did we get all this history? From the old world, China, India, Egypt, Arabs, the Italians, the New World, we had finally the Aztecs. We learned a lot from the Aztecs from Mexico. They knew how to use herbs. They were the ones that we got the first potatoes from, even dried potatoes. They did it before we ever did it. And in particular was when Marco Polo brought the teas, we learned about teas from Asia, because we probably, what we learned from the natives here was like the shot tea, the sage tea, that kind of thing. But also, these are common, the most commonly used here in the valley. And living here is different. It's slow. We don't rush like I did in the city. And I would tell my daughter a picture of one of the nuns there. I remember coming one summer and I was trotting off to what we call town, the plaza. Anyway, and this nun was there rocking in a chair. She was an old English nun. She said, girlie, come here. And I said, what, sister? Why are you going in such a hurry? Where are you going? Oh, sister, I lived in the city. That's the way they walk there. Because in San Francisco, you don't walk like this. No, you're on the go, you know. But so life is, we take it easy. It's, hello neighbor, I'm going for the mail, that kind of attitude. But usually summertime, you see people in their gardens. A long time ago, everybody had a garden. But because our water issues are dear now, we can't do those things. But I see people growing things in little boxes, little pots. Like we have wild things that we, quelite. Quelite is lamb's quarters, and it's like the prize spinach. I wrote a story that actually was published in a book, and I think I had that on there. It's called Estelite. And I talked about in the story about how my grandmother had us pick it, dry it, and then when winter came, we used it. We were very frugal about taking the plants and drying them and having them for the summer, like my laboratory that I had. So that kind of thing. Another one is verdolagas or purslane. We dearly love that. We eat it raw, salad. We cook it with beans. And a study done in Russia, they found it lowered the cholesterol dearly. So I'll pick it and eat it with vinegar and olive oil, and little onion. So there are a lot of things that all people cherish. Of course, they're chili, but we had those two particular ones are greens they really like to pick.
Is there any other questions you want to ask?
Is there anything else from the Zoom audience?
Go ahead and ask that.
Okay. Teresa, you are an hour and a half from 2.5 hours from Colorado Springs, an hour from Taos, maybe 3 hours from Denver or something like that. Do you get many people through San Luis? Do you get many visitors or tourists?
Unfortunately, because of the COVID, we do, because we have our beautiful Capilla de Todos los Santos, a chapel of all the saints with the stations of the cross. Yes, we even had royalty from Spain one year. And so they do come, but unfortunately, because of lack of certain means, we're all getting older. We need to kind of revive that more, but people still come, and locals like to do the station. My husband and I went up to the church just recently, and we prayed. We're going to kneel down to pray, and a bluebird was flying around in the chapel. It was the most delightful thing that happened to us. It sort of woke up our spirit. I came down real excited, and I told Brenda, there's a bluebird in the church, and I opened the side door to say he wouldn't go out. But we see bluebirds up there, and that's unusual because they like higher country, but they're up there. Yeah, that was beautiful.
I hear the bluebird is a sign of happiness, and
Yes.
and you have today brought a great deal of happiness and education to all of us here and people joining us on Zoom. And you talk about the plants as being a gift from God, las doñas.
Definitely.
And I would just like to say, I consider you a gift from God. And I think it was,
Well, we're all a gift from God,
well,
all of us.
and it was so fortuitous that Alice and I were driving by that one time and got a chance to meet you, and now you're sharing this.
Yeah.
So Teresa, on behalf of Ascension Lutheran Church and all the people who are watching here, we want to thank you for a wonderful presentation and
You're very
all that you do
welcome.
for the people. And God bless you.
And God willing, if they come and they go on one of my walks, I'm still trotting. I just put on my